Here at DLSNC North Catholic, we have a tight-knit community. If you ask any student what they value in DLSNC, they would say it feels like family. We celebrate our community through our masses, prayer service trips, and pep rallies, especially when we had with the best friend handshake competition. And since my best friend here, Trey, is right here, I'd like to show you guys my handshake.
Oh, my back.
You ready? Oh. Okay, what are you reading? Okay.
Whoa, oh my goodness.
Oh. Butterflies. Whoa, best friends. Each class at DLSNC builds their own special community, and together we are part of one. Now I would like to welcome Jonna Frater, class of 2006, to share her story and her community helped shape her life.
Good afternoon. When Ms. de Villiers asked me if I would speak to you all today, one thing she wanted me to consider was why DLSNC is important to Portland. A pretty big question that has thousands of answers. It seemed like a big undertaking to narrow it down into this speech, but you'll soon find out I'm always up for a challenge. Growing up, I didn't think about going to college. My parents didn't go, and they were doing fine. My brothers didn't go, and they were the coolest people I knew. But per my mom, not going to college was not an option. However, having parents that had never done something made it really hard when it was time to start figuring it out. Before I could figure out how to get to college, I had to figure out how to succeed in high school. During my first month at DLSNC, I learned how to tie a tie, how to properly shake hands, and how to speak to the CEO of DLSNC, where I interned as part of the corporate internship program, now called the Corporate Work Study Program. By the end of my freshman year, I was managing a full high school class load, playing varsity basketball, and navigating the inner workings of a risk management firm. I don't think you'd ever seen a more organized 15-year-old. And 15 years later, my handshake instantly tells you I mean business, and I speak with so much confidence, you think I'm an old hand at anything we're talking about. My internship during my junior and senior years of DLSNC was up at OHSU. I learned a great deal and loved what I did. And during the days I was at school, I was reminded that as students we were representatives of DLSNC, but we were also representatives of ourselves, of who we would become. What message did we want to send to prospective employers and mentors? The message DLSNC helped me to realize I wanted to send was that I was a hard worker. I was confident in my abilities, and I was eager to grow and learn. I'm not one to settle. When it came to getting into college, I was set on the architecture program at UNLV. I worked with Barbara Ward, DLSNC's college counselor, to navigate the college application process and to find and win a number of scholarships and financial packages, including the Western Undergraduate Exchange, which helped me pay in-state tuition for my out-of-state college, and the Scanner Foundation Scholarship, which I was awarded my 4 years of college. My story is one of 52 in my class alone. There have been 13 more classes since then. I imagine Ms. Ward is the hardest working person I've ever met. The Mountains DLSNC faculty and staff move to ensure students are prepared for, attend, and have the skills necessary to excel in college, rival Kilimanjaro, and nonetheless, they move them. And like many DLSNC alumni will tell you, I'm the first in my family to graduate college. I graduated in March of 2010, figuring I could beat the rush and land a job before the rest of my cohort graduated in June. So I moved back to Portland with my political science degree in hand and quickly realized I had no idea what to do. I started thinking about things I was good at and then tried to pair those with the skills with the positions that would help others in the most meaningful way. Fortunately for me, I'm a 2006 graduate of DLSNC, so from the time I was 14 years old, I've been making those lists. And most importantly, because of my De La Salle internship at OHSU and the connections it helped me establish on the Hill, I began my first day as a full-time employee at OHSU only 3 months after I walked across the stage at graduation. I even got to keep the paycheck this time. Now it's been almost 9 years, and I've grown and taken on new roles, recently completed an Emerging Leaders course, and just finished my project management certificate. De La Salle had a major impact to help me get where I am today, but also helped me understand who I am and what my values are. At OHSU, we recently started the 10-5 rule. Visually acknowledge patients and coworkers at 10 feet, verbally greet them at 5. This was one of the easiest rules for me to start following because at 14 years old, De La Salle gave me the context for it. Every morning, my principal, Mr. Hauskamp, stood at the front door of the school and shook hands with each student as we walked in. You even got a quarter if you couldn't remember your name. I don't even think I made a whole dollar off him. He was that good. At the time, I thought it was weird. Certainly, he had more important things to do. He had an entire school to run. But as I grew up and looked back on it, he was doing the most important thing a principal could do. He was making sure we knew he was there for us, making sure we knew someone saw us, ensuring that we started off the day acknowledged. Many of the students De La Salle serves have parents and guardians that aren't available to them at home when they wake up and get ready to school due to commitments and other work. Whether it be, for many students, Mr. Hauskamp was the first person they spoke to that day, the first person to check in on them and make sure that nothing was up. Takes less than 10 seconds to greet someone, but for some, that greeting lasts for hours afterwards. It's something I've come to value and I've come to learn is valued by others. The connections we make at De La Salle last a lifetime, not only networking at our internships, but the bonds with our classmates and friends. And even when we haven't seen each other for months or years, we catch up like no time has passed. My friend Rashida Saunders, class of '05, is a coach for the girls' basketball team. She was also my teammate back in the day. I attended one of her games this season and ran into Giovanni Battles and Ashley Rollins, also both class of '05, cheering on Gio's nephew, a current De La Salle student. The whole game, Gio and I reminisced about being out on the court and laughing about how exhausting it looks now. In February, I volunteered for a fundraising event put on by a nonprofit my friend and fellow De La Salle graduate Twee Fan works for. There I ran into Mr. Joy, who was my vice principal, and Mr. Fraser, my dean of students. I hadn't seen Mr. Joy or Mr. Fraser in years, but here we all were, not by happenstance, but because De La Salle leaders and alumni are community builders. This community is mine, and it's important to me. I'm a Knight because of this community. I'm a second-generation Portland native. My dad was born in Vanport, and my grandmother carried him out on her hip when it flooded. He was 5 months old. My mother grew up in a house not a half a mile from the house I grew up in. Portland has changed quite a bit from when they went to high school. In the time between my parents' graduation and mine, there were only a few ways out of North and Northeast Portland for kids of color. My father joined the Air Force, my oldest brother was killed, and I went to college. 3 completely different paths in one family. This part of my story isn't unique as a De La Salle student. These are the realities these students face. De La Salle is important to Portland. There are 300 kids in this building and 1,000 more across the country that are living proof. Without De La Salle, I honestly don't know where I'd be. For those 4 years, De La Salle surrounded me with kids and teachers that looked like me and had stories similar to mine, which is really important as a teenager, to just feel like you fit in somewhere. De La Salle gave me Miss Ward, who single-handedly made sure I had what I needed to go to college. De La Salle gave me Mr. Reese, who was a shot away after high school to make sure I succeeded in college. De La Salle gave me my corporate internship, which helped me make the connections at 16 years old that I could rely on once I graduated. De La Salle gave me Mr. Hauskamp, who reminds me to this day that even the actions that seem small have great impact. De La Salle is important to Portland. Full stop. Thank you.